Mero's manager, Victor, airs out why the Bodega Boys ended.
We don't have agents that try to prevent people from speaking to HR to report credible complaints of racial discrimination. We don't have executive producers that try to prevent reports of bullying and sexual harassment from reaching HR, and instead use the threat of retaliation to fire people if they do so. We don't have a partner at a law firm telling me that although the entertainment industry fetishizes the Black experience, I should accept retaliation as standard. We don't have subcontractors that threaten other members of our team with bodily harm for standing up for a Black director that is thinking of resigning due to discrimination. Racism is an institution that is created by the active choice of individuals, and its maintenance requires complicity. Another thing we don't do at Victory Light.
That's right. On a recent episode of Victory Light, Mero's manager, Victor, really revealed why the end of Desus and Mero occurred. And it was interesting. He basically read an email about how bad things had gotten. He revealed that the execs or the company, I believe the company that he was working with to produce the Desus and Mero show on Showtime, Jax Media, may have given him an email and told him to read it so that he could announce the departure from the show. I'm assuming he refused to do that, and he even made insinuations that there was racist practices being practiced by the company that they brought on to the show. Now, for those of you who do not know, Desus and Mero broke up, and a lot of people thought it was over shady business practices and so on and so forth. But it seems like there's this new caveat, one that other people did not address, and that was creative differences between the production company that was making the Desus and Mero Showtime show and Desus and Mero. But there's some other things we're going to get into that I think people are miscounting as far as why Desus wanted to distance himself from Mero. Now, there's also the character of Victor, who was the manager of Desus and Mero, and I believe the person who wasn't necessarily the reason they broke up, but at least was a big part in why the business may have led astray and why Desus was not okay with coming back to the business arrangement that was made. Now, the Bodega Boys were a big podcast. I mean, these guys were interviewing Obama. They were probably ahead of Joe Budden and Drink Champs and $1 Million Worth of Game just because they could be on ESPN, and they transcended the urban media platform so much so that they would be on national television. But after allegations of bad business practices, like I said before, they could no longer be together. Well, it seems as if the reason that everything went astray was that the Showtime show was mired with production issues, disagreements between the people Desus and Mero were collaborating with in order to execute the show on Showtime. I mean, things like a lot of HR issues, basically. A lot of drama, a lot of backroom dealings. And that is essentially why the Showtime show was a quagmire, something that could not equal the Vice show, and may show why sometimes you shouldn't take the bigger check just because it's the bigger check, because there was a severe drop-off between the Showtime show and the Vice show. And even Mero would go on to say that Jax Media was cutting corners in terms of not having people come into the studio or not flying people out to interview Elton John, instead having people join by Zoom, and that there was a lot of gatekeeping done by the execs at the production company who felt like they should have complete control. And then there was even other situations where they were asking, I think, Victor to fire somebody, and he didn't want to fire them, and then that person that he asked to be fired had an issue with him, and there was racist allegations, all type of stuff. But this was said by Victor on Victory Light. And we all know Victor is very heavily pro Mero. I mean, Mero is the guy that introduced him to this whole situation. Mero is also the guy that put Desus in touch with Victor. So could it be that the business advice that Victor was giving Mero was heavily tilted towards Mero's side of things? I don't know. But I wanted to end this video by saying that I think the reason Desus wanted to distance himself from Mero and Victor was he probably didn't like how unprofessional Mero was. Like, I'm just looking at some of the old podcasts. I'm guessing he didn't enjoy how Mero would be late. And I know in an interview with Joe Budden, Mero disregarded how some of the stuff he did was unprofessional. And there was even other interviews where guests were noticing how Mero was not the professional one, that Desus was the one actually answering the questions and being on top of his duties and his job. I think Mero felt like since he was the talent, he was entitled to act a certain way. And I'm telling you, as time becomes clearer, I believe when Desus does speak about this whole situation, he's basically going to say, yeah, I didn't like the situation because Mero wasn't professional. I felt like Victor and Mero were, they were the ones driving the ship, and I was kind of the odd man out, and I didn't really have say into what happened. I mean, Mero himself said that he owned the Bodega Boys brand. I can't imagine Desus being cool with that. And I one day want to do an episode of this channel, The Stop, where I break down who won the war. Because right now, the most active person is Mero, and Desus is still inactive. It's been like almost like 3 years since the breakup. So this guy must have just sat on a bunch of cash and is able to not do absolutely nothing and is just sitting by playing the sidelines. I heard somewhere that he's gonna be doing a a travel show akin to Anthony Bourdain. It might be on Amazon or some show like that. But Mero has the podcast. He has 2 podcasts. He has Victory Light. He has 7 a.m. in Brooklyn. And he also has his own YouTube channel, which is more akin to the Bodega Boys brand. And he's actually doing a great job of bringing back that Bodega Boys vibe. Victory Light is a lot like the Bodega Boys podcast. But granted, there's like 37 ads, I think, because it's on iHeart. So the art is lost a little bit. And Desus is just in the background, not doing a damn thing. He did do some commercial about heartburn medication. It was a little bit nasty. I'm not going to lie. He was like, y'all ready for some glizzies? And it didn't even seem tongue in cheek. It genuinely seemed like he was just saying that. And it kind of felt like selling out, like as far as like going mainstream and, doing that mainstream commercial stuff. But then again, Desus is kind of doing that to some extent with Victory Light. Just a bunch of ads. Hey, man, both of these guys are going increasingly different in the directions that they want to go in post Bodega Boys. And I think it's sad, but I just got to see what Desus does. I got to see if he's able to do anything. Because when he was on the Jimmy Kimmel show, I wasn't really feeling it. I thought he struggled. But I'm sure the fans have picked sides and they're kind of ruined for whoever goes. All right, y'all. Had to do a Desus and Mero video. I'm probably going to be doing more Desus and Mero videos. I got a deep dive on some of their old episodes. There was a lot of tension on their old episodes that I haven't explored. And I'm going to be doing that. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.